Alrighty, so for this week, or last week I guess, I'm recording this video a little late. There hasn't been a whole lot of stuff changed in game, so this will be a fairly short video. The main thing that has changed are just the boxes, the border boxes for all of the text. The reason they're white and kind of gray right now is because I am going to have an option to be able to change the colors of everything. So they're kind of plain right now just to test the color changing stuff, um, which I haven't fully added in yet, so I can't show that off yet. But that will be in hopefully probably another week or two, because I've been working on dialogue stuff this week. Okay, so some minor changes throughout all of this stuff, just updating boxes and the colors to have that option for later. Going in here, I think this might be different from before, and I'm just messing around with kind of layout stuff for this. This again is new, and I just kind of moved a bunch of stuff around so it looked a little bit nicer. It's still not exactly how I want it to look. I need to make this a little bit, this thing's a little off center, but the functionality is all exactly the same, it just looks a little bit different. Getting into the game here, one of the other pieces that has changed is I reorganized the background for all of the sub pieces of inventory, so the weapons, armor, spells, and such. I also made these little icons, so it's very easy to see which is which. If you hate reading, which some people do, including myself, and then instead of having, which I talked about in the previous video, of having this item description stuff here, there's this button that swaps to the item information or the description. I need to change that name of that button, but now you can just swap back and forth between stuff. The swapping is in all of the different screens. Everything looks very similar, but has a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit easier to see stuff quickly. And if you want to get a little bit of lore, you can hit the button to go to look at stuff. And that's just present in all of the other screens as well. These ones don't have icons because I haven't finished all of the icons for everything yet, and they are going to be updating depending on which spell you're on, as well as I have not added stuff in for these yet, because they will be slightly different depending on which item you're looking at. They're not going to do exactly the same thing, so having the same icon wouldn't make any sense. So as I said, this is actually a pretty short video. That was the bulk of the in-game stuff that I had done. The rest of the week was actually doing storytelling or making dialogue. I haven't actually been able to put any of that into the game yet, so I can't show the cinematic system. I'll be showing that in the next video, but I can show you through the magic of beautiful pictures in the next little bit here, kind of the idea of how it'll look. Okay, so the way the cinematic sequence is going to work is like this. The beginning of the game, you hit new game, you start it up, and you have an intro cinematic that kind of lays the basic foundation of the world, gives you some background lore, kind of preps you for what's going on before you learn about your character. After that cinematic plays, you go into the faction selection screen and choose one of the 6 factions to begin your journey. Each of those factions has their own cinematic that will play after you've chosen a faction. Well, more specifically, after you've chosen your character. So you pick a faction, you pick your class, and then you go into the cinematic screen. Depending on a few different things, there can be some changes here and there. Some of the factions are more mage related, so if you pick a warrior in like the mage kingdom, you're going to have a slightly different thing here and there, but the gist is generally this flow, right? After this point, all of the stories kind of converge. So you have your own little like starting cinematic experience, and then after that, they all kind of become one, depending on which one you started in. So if I started here, which is, let's say, the Life Kingdom, after I've finished the Life Kingdom beginning story arc, I have to go through all the other different kingdoms. There are no cinematics at that point. It's all just going to be through dialogue that you talk to other characters. but you have your like kind of start experience. So it would be kind of sort of like this, where I go that way, and then I have to go talk to this kingdom, and then that kingdom, and so on and so forth. At the very end of the game, and potentially even in between, there will be some other cinematics as well. So depending on how I will end up doing some of the things that I'm planning in the future, there could be some like side cinematics that explain some other stuff. Definitely endings, different ending types for cinematics and stuff. So the general flow of stuff starts off pretty rigid in the beginning where you're making your choices, and then becomes much more open-ended as you go back through the rest of the game. So as far as what I've got done so far, I've actually started on the cinematics for each um, opening. So I've got the opening dialogue and like idea planned out for what the cinematic is in the beginning, and each of the different sections or factions. What I'm going to continue working on the rest of this week is the actual dialogue that happens after the cinematics have finished. So these cinematics again, so going in like to the life, I'm not on the brush, going into the life faction here, getting past this cinematic, when I get to this point, there'd be a bunch of dialogue. I'm talking to my master, I'm learning how to become the next champion, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. Stuff happens, right? Um, and then continuing on through all of the different areas with more and more dialogue as you're going through. So that's what I'm going to be working on next, is writing out all of that dialogue, coming up with all of the dialogue for each NPC that you're going to be talking to, and all of the options for quests and stuff like that. It's going to probably be a very, very long process, but I'd like to at least get started on at least one or two of them.